Could the Atlanta Hawks actually beat the Philadelphia 76ers? Let's get into this. The Atlanta Hawks are currently up 1-0 in the series between them and the Sixers, and they played extremely well in that first round game. So that leads to the question, could the Atlanta Hawks actually win this series? When coming into this series, the Philadelphia 76ers were heavily favored. Let's first talk about the Atlanta Hawks and the Philadelphia 76ers and see what they do well and what they don't do well, and compare the two and see who's really the better team. So let's first start with the Atlanta Hawks. So when you talk about the Atlanta Hawks, of course you have to talk about Trae Young. He's their best player by far, and he's the reason why they got this far in the playoffs and played so well, especially in that first round of the series against the New York Knicks. So when a lot of people think about Trae Young, they think about his long-range ability and ability to hit three-point shots at will. But the thing that really separates him is the fact that he realized he doesn't need to take as many threes from so deep, especially. We saw in his rookie season, he was taking too many threes from way out downtown, and obviously he could hit a certain percentage of them, but either way, it's not an efficient shot, and I think what he realized throughout the seasons as he's been playing, and especially this playoffs as we've been seeing, is the fact that he can get all the way to the basket with his quickness and his ball handling ability and either put up that floater in the paint or kick out to a wide open guy from three because he has three-point shooters literally all around him, or he can throw up that lob to Clint Capella in the pick and roll. He just realized he doesn't need to take those deep threes every play, and he's way more effective for it. Now, does that mean he can't make those deep three-point shots? Obviously not. We still see him in this playoff series still take those deep three-point shots, and he's still making it. He's just not taking it as much as he used to in the past, which I think overall helps his game out tremendously and makes him a more efficient player. It's kind of tough for me to say this because he just beat my New York Knicks, and I really don't like Trae Young personally, but I have to admit this guy has been stepping up his game tremendously, and he's a very good player in this league, and based on the way he's been playing, he definitely will be a great player for a while in years to come. That passing ability really separates him in my opinion, and the fact that he can make those floaters so efficiently. I think Trae Young definitely makes his teammates around him better, and I think we've seen that this season and seasons past with the guys that he's been playing with, getting them wide open shots like guys like Kevin Huerter, and this season Bogdanovic, who's been amazing for them. The Atlanta Hawks front office definitely deserves so much credit for the team they were able to put around Trae Young because it's literally all shooters, as well as they have Clint Capella to lock down that paint. So I think it's for Trae Young personally, I think it's literally the perfect team you could think of for him, for his game style, because as I said, he can run the pick and roll with Clint Capella to get into the paint and either throw a lob to Clint Capella or put up his floater, which he does typically, or he can kick out to one of his wide open shooters, and literally every single player on his team could shoot. So every single player he kicks out to has a decent chance of hitting that wide open shot, or even somewhat contested shot if you're talking about Bogey, who's been just amazing in this playoff so far. So in terms of the Atlanta Hawks offensive efficiency, they're definitely one of the top 5 teams in the league. So offensively, they're definitely good enough to get past the Philadelphia 76ers. But let's talk about their defensive ability, because coming into the season and in the beginning of the season, they definitely struggled on that end. But ever since they made that coaching change to Nate McMillan, their defense has improved so significantly, and they have actually been a pretty good defensive team thus far in the playoffs. I personally think it was more of Julius Randle just getting into his own head, but I definitely think you should give the Atlanta Hawks some credit for completely locking down Julius Randle and the whole Knicks team in general, as well as in the first round or the first game of the second round against the Sixers. They definitely did a great job because at one point they were winning by over 20 points against the Sixers, who are heavily favored at home, so obviously you have to give them a ton of credit for that. But now let's start to talk about the Philadelphia 76ers. So of course the Sixers have been one of the best teams in the league this season. They were actually the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, and their calling card is definitely their defensive ability. When you look at their team, they have defensive guys all around everywhere you look. They have Ben Simmons, who can guard 1 through 5. Danny Green's no slouch on the defensive end. He's still also a very good defender. They have Joel Embiid, and Joel Embiid, I made a video earlier, either Joel Embiid or Ben Simmons should be the defensive player of the year, and they have 2 of those guys, which is nuts. They have defensive players all around and everywhere you look, and they're definitely probably the best team in terms of their defensive ability, maybe the second best team behind the Clippers, but their defense is definitely their calling card. But when you look at the offensive end, they're no slouch either. They obviously have Ben Simmons, who can get all the way to the basket and also has an amazing passing and vision ability where he can see players move to their spots before they even do it, so that makes him a much better passer and facilitator, similar to what LeBron James does and Chris Paul and other guys like that. So I think Ben Simmons really gets the offense flowing, but also they have Tobias Harris, who I think is a very underrated player for them. He's just their go-to guy in terms of scoring ability. They just give him the ball when they're struggling, and he typically gets a bucket. He's really improved his game this season significantly. And I didn't even mention their best offensive player, which is Joel Embiid, who can literally do everything on the offensive end. You can run the pick and roll with this guy, you can run the pick and pop with this guy, or you could just give it down to Joel Embiid on the block, and he just works whoever's guarding him and gets an easy bucket or draws a foul, like we've been seeing in game 1 of the playoffs with the Atlanta Hawks, because Clint Capella in his first game against Joel Embiid actually fouled out. So Embiid, even though he's clearly hurt out there, and I'm even surprised that he's playing with the injuries that he had, he's obviously still playing well enough offensively. So obviously on the defensive end, the Philadelphia 76ers are elite and one of the best in the league, maybe the best in the league. And on terms of their offensive ability, they're still definitely very elite when you talk about Tobias Harris just being an absolute bucket. They also have Ben Simmons to spread the ball around, and they still do have shooters as well. They have Danny Green, Shake Milton could hit the three. They definitely have shooters around them. And then when you talk about Joel Embiid scoring at will, either in the paint, in the pick and roll, the pick and pop, he could shoot threes, he could literally do everything, and he gets your opposing player in foul trouble, which is huge, because when you're talking about getting the opposing center in foul trouble and Clint Capella, if you can get him out of the game early with foul trouble, now you can, as Ben Simmons or whoever, Tobias Harris, now you could really get to the basket much easier without that rim protector in the paint, and it just makes everything easier for you. Because one of the things and one of the reasons why the Atlanta Hawks improved defensively so much is because they really figured out that how to use Clint Capella, and the fact that he could just completely lock down the paint and make it much easier for you defensively as a team, because even if the guy gets by you, Clint Capella's there to block that shot or contest that shot very well, and it makes it very hard on that guy who's driving to make that shot. Obviously on the offensive and defensive end, the Sixers are definitely very elite in this league and definitely have a great chance to win this series, but the biggest thing for them this series, I think, is going to be the health of Joel Embiid, like it is for any team and their best star player. I think if Joel Embiid is not healthy in this series and misses a bunch of games this series, I think the Atlanta Hawks have an amazing chance to steal this series away from the Sixers. But I think if Joel Embiid is playing in this series and is playing effectively and efficiently, I think the Sixers obviously have a better chance of winning this series. It all depends on how Joel Embiid is playing, or how Joel Embiid is in terms of his health, I should say. It's not if Embiid is playing or not. I think it's more so if Embiid is playing. Even if he is playing, he has to be at least somewhat healthy in the sense that he could play efficiently and effectively. If he's just out there and clearly hurt and not playing up to par what he usually does, or even half of what he usually does, and he just can't play that well on the defensive end especially, I think that's going to be a huge point and really a huge win for the Atlanta Hawks. And I think if that does happen, I think the Hawks have a great chance to actually steal the series and take the series. Because even though Embiid was hurt in the first game of the series, I think he was playing fairly well. Well, no, he was definitely playing very well, but he was obviously hurt out there. And if the Sixers don't step up and they potentially lose game 2 to the Atlanta Hawks, and now the Hawks are up 2-0 going home into Atlanta, obviously they have a great shot at winning this playoff series. But the Atlanta Hawks are no slouch. I think a lot of people are underrating what the Atlanta Hawks could do in this playoff series and just in general, but they're no slouch. I saw it firsthand against the New York Knicks. Trae Young and the Atlanta Hawks are very difficult to guard because Trae Young has that quickness to get by as his initial defender and get into the paint and either put up that floater or lob it to Clint Capella. And now if you want to bring in a secondary defender to completely stop that, which you can, but now you're leaving one of their wide open shooters, or their shooters, wide open, and everybody on their team, as I mentioned before, could hit those threes consistently. So they're just a very difficult team to guard, and they're a very talented team. And obviously the Atlanta Hawks front office deserves so much credit for putting all those shooters around Trae Young and also getting Clint Capella. That was just such a big addition for them and makes them so dangerous out there. If I'm the Philadelphia 76ers, what I personally do is I put Ben Simmons on Trae Young consistently and try to stay out of foul trouble, which is much easier said than done because Trae Young is obviously amazing at drawing those fouls. But that's what I do, try to lock him down and somewhat slow him down a little bit, because obviously it's going to be very hard to get by Ben Simmons. He's a great defender. If he does get in foul trouble, although obviously maybe I would put Matisse Thybulle on him or Danny Green, but I would really like to keep Ben Simmons on him full time if possible. That's what I do, and then try to lock down all the other shooters around him and just make it difficult on him. But my pick for this series, if Joel Embiid is healthy, would definitely be the Sixers. If Embiid was not healthy, although, I would definitely be picking the Atlanta Hawks. I just think they're way too talented not to win if Embiid was out. But even if Embiid does play, I still could see the Atlanta Hawks winning the series. But my personal pick, I'm going to take the Sixers in 6. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think the Atlanta Hawks could actually win the series, or do you think the Sixers would win the series? Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy, please leave a like, subscribe, and hit that post notification bell. Until next time, peace out, guys.